And now we're going to, actually, will you clap? Great. Welcome back to, what was the podcast called? Do you remember?
This podcast?
Mm-hmm. I remember now. Okay, one more time. Welcome back to A Violent Act of Desperation. I'm here with today's guest, Ben Kassoy. Ben is a poet, a clown.
I don't know if a clown in progress. I don't know if I can quite identify as a clown yet.
Let's dive right in on that,
Okay.
because there are a lot of people who take one single clown class and consider themselves a clown, or an improv class. They consider themselves an improviser, a stand-up class, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You've taken 2 clown classes?
2, yeah.
Why are you not a clown?
So glad you asked. I will do something for as long as possible without claiming it as part of like my identity or an identity. Like I've been dancing my whole life. I went to a dance festival yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to this guy in line for the bathroom and I was like, "Oh, are you battling?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm in the battle." He's like, "Oh, are you a dancer?" And I'm like, no, I like to dance, but I'm not a dancer. And I think if you asked the people in my life whether or not I'm a dancer, I think 90% of people would say yes, would say I'm like a capital D dancer, and I don't identify as one of those because I know that there's a gulf between what I am and what like a real, like what a legit dancer is, and there's a much bigger gulf between what I am and what I do and like what actual clowns do.
Tell me about the 10% of people who wouldn't say you're a capital D dancer.
Now I wonder if they exist.
I don't think they do.
I think every single person besides me would tell you that I'm a dancer. Except maybe the dance people in my life. Like I wonder, yeah. Like I have a friend our friend Julio Medina, Professor J, is a dance professor.
Yeah.
I actually just had breakfast with him. I wonder if he would call me a dancer, and part of me feels like he would, and that the only reason that he wouldn't call me that is because we just had this conversation and I told him that I don't identify as a dancer. So maybe he would want to identify me that way, but maybe he wouldn't because I have non-identified to him.
So he would find it disrespectful to identify you as a dancer after you've shared, I don't want to be a dancer.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think probably everyone would say I'm a dancer, but I don't say that.
I'm only digging in on this so hard because A, you got to talk about something.
Thank God we're talking about something.
And B, I think that a lot of people relate to the sort of, I mean, it's not really imposter syndrome because there's not like something more you want from dance. I feel like it's a respectful way that you're trying to disidentify it with dance.
Yeah, some of it is a little bit of an imposter syndrome, and some of it is also just being very realistic about my experience, my skill level, and also very importantly, how much a part of a community I am. So I went to this dance festival yesterday, and everyone there was a dancer, partially because they're more experienced than I am and they're better than I am. And maybe most of all, they are immersed in a community of dancing and of dancers and of that culture. And I dip in and out of that culture. Like I know how to kind of be a part of it or be a guest in the culture, but that's not like my life. Like that's not the default for my life. And so for me, it's just being realistic about that I'm standing on the outside a little bit looking in, and I can see the people on the inside, and I know that even though they would have me and they would welcome me, they're different from me in ways that I don't feel like I deserve to identify with that, because it would somehow negate their identities.
And do you think that if somebody who doesn't dance at all asked you if you're a dancer, they would appreciate you giving all that context that you just provided?
I don't know. Maybe they would. Probably not. I think maybe they would either not understand it or not care or read it as some kind of like false modesty.
Right.
Like sometimes I'll be at like a wedding or something, and I've been to a wedding or two.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth sharing before we move on that you are. I guess this is the nature of what we're talking about. I would say you're a very good dancer. But especially at a wedding, your skills would be sort of top dog.
And I make that very clear to everyone. That's how I carry myself. That's how I go to every wedding prepared to battle and just knowing that I would smoke anyone there. Mm-hmm. No, but this is the thing. I go to a wedding. Almost every wedding I'm at, I'm the best dancer there. I went to this festival yesterday. I was the worst dancer there. And so when I'm at a wedding and someone's like, "Oh, are you a professional dancer?" My feeling should be feeling flattered that they think I'm a good dancer, but my feelings are actually of embarrassment because I say, if you saw me and what I'm doing and then compared that to an actual dancer, you would feel actually embarrassed knowing that you have totally misidentified me because what I do is so much lower than what actual dancers do.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before because we've been to a number of weddings together. That number might be 3, it might be 5. I don't really know.
Sure.
But
I've smoked you at every single one.
Well, I was gonna say I don't know if that's true because I think a lot of people. I think wedding dancing is a specific thing.
It's different.
And it's also like specifically, I guess, like white people wedding dancing.
I'll say this straight to the barrel. I only go to white weddings. Exclusively.
You said you weren't going to say anything clippable. And I think that, I can't remember when, I feel like it was at a wedding, but we talked about how there's a certain kind of like I think you sort of have both, but I think you do have a sense at a wedding of like, I've got to pull it back a little bit. Like there are times where you're comfortable and you go all out, but there are other times where other people are probably like, oh, there's a dance circle forming, Ben, go get in there. And you're kind of like, I don't necessarily want to do that right now. Mm-hmm. Whereas like 26-year-old Julian off of like, 5 gin and tonics and 3 whiskey gingers is running straight into, I started the dance circle.
And well, you should. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think nobody would ask, but nobody would ask me, oh, are you a professional dancer? But they would have enjoyed watching my dancing at the wedding.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's, I don't know. I think is there anything there?
Yeah. Because there is. Right, there's a difference between being like a kind of skilled dancer versus being like a fun, good dancer who people love to dance with and people who enjoy dancing with and enjoy being around and just bring like a lively energy. Like plenty of people do that. You totally do that without being the kind of person that people be like, oh, are you a professional dancer? Are you hired? Are you paid to be here?
Right.
But I think another thing, and this isn't even really what we're talking about, but dance has played like many roles for me in like throughout my life. If I was performing or battling or whatever it was. Now dance is just to feel good. It's strictly hedonistic for me. Like I spend so much of my time, and this is a lot of like what the chapbook is about. Can we get to selling that?
What the
please?
fuck? What is? Wait.
Jesus.
What is? What are these?
Oh my God! I brought these here. I carry this around. No, but so much of what I do, kind of in my creative life and in just my life is very heady, for better or worse. It's ideas and creativity, and it's also like frenzied anxiety and catastrophic thinking and all of these things. And dance is the total opposite of that. I have no thoughts. I'm just in my body, and it is pure joy and like pure movement. And the aesthetic of it doesn't make a difference for me. And I'm not trying to win a battle or perform or get people to cheer. I just love to move because it feels really good. And in fact, the aesthetic is so far to the other end where when I see myself dance, I feel the same way that I feel or that other people feel when they hear their own recorded voice. It's like totally mortifying for me, and I hate the way that I look, to the point where I don't like videos to see videos of myself dancing. I don't like to take classes for a lot of reasons, but part of which is because I don't like to see myself in the mirror because I think it looks like totally mortifying. And so for me, dance is just about like being in the moment and feeling good about how the experience is like lighting up my life. And I feel like lots of times to be like a dancer, there's a part of that, and you also have other means, whether it's booking a gig or winning a battle or performing or improving your craft or whatever it is. And for me, it's just about feeling good, and that's a distinction I would make.
Yeah, and I think that should be what being a dancer is, or that should be what being a writer is, or that should be what being a clown is. And I guess I think the universal experience is like it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't want to identify as a dancer because dance is so important to you, but it does make sense logically that you wouldn't want to bring down this community that's so important to you. And it's the same for like, people are like, oh, are you a comedian? And like there can be, I mean, one time somebody said, you're a stand-up? And I said, yes. And they said, you pay all your bills that way? And I murdered them on the spot. And I saw red, and then there was just, they were broken into 4 or 5 pieces, and I had to leave town. But no, that's not, that last part didn't happen, but
it should have
happened. The first part, we
all would have supported you. And
I think they were probably like excited to potentially meet somebody who does that.
Right.
And but I also feel like that's sort of the question behind the question. Anytime somebody asks, like if somebody says, are you a dancer? And you feel like they're asking, are you a professional dancer? And there just has to be a way to say, this is something that's very important to me and I do identify as it, but also there are either aspects of it that don't intersect with what you're thinking of when you think of it, or there are aspects of it that don't intersect right now that I'm still working on. But nobody really wants to. It's just a terrifying question.
Yeah, I mean, right. When people ask me, like, what do you do? I know what they're asking me is, how do you make money?
Right.
And so I say, to make money, I write copy for nonprofits and mission-driven organizations. And to not make money, I write poetry. And so then I'm answering the question, and then I'm also telling them I'm not my job, and giving them an option of, hey, do you want to follow up on the thing where I make money, or do you want to follow up on the thing that I've already acknowledged doesn't make me money, so I must be more interested in that? Pick that. Or choice C is they don't ask me anything else. But it is not to get into the whole like anti-capitalist thing. But the question comes from like capitalism, right? Because it's like, oh, what do you do? Or like, and then we associate what do you do, which could mean what are you interested in? How do you spend your time? What are you passionate about? How do you identify in a number of ways? We equate that with what is your job? How do you make money?
Right.
What is your capital? Like, what is your capital value? But one of the cool things is that in line for the bathroom at this hip hop festival, which I would actually like to go to a dance fest and just spend time in line at the bathroom.
It sounds like you did based on what you've told us of this festival so far.
All of this, I was in line for like 3.5 hours, and it was totally worth it. But this kid, and I call him a kid, he was probably a teenager. He was like, "Are you a dancer?" And in that context, he did not mean, "Are you a professional dancer?" He meant, in this space, knowing where you are, do you identify as a dancer without the money? Because he would identify as a dancer, but it's not his job because he's 17 and he doesn't have, he doesn't have a job. So he has another identity pre-job, which is dancer.
Right.
And he'll probably have that all the way throughout his life, regardless of whether he dances professionally or not.
I love pre-job. I'm going to start using that.
Pre-job.
When people ask what I do. I'm pre-job.
I'm pre-job, yeah. Yeah, you're not even in between jobs. You're pre-job.
No, I'm really, at this point, I'm just perpetually pre-job.
Pre-job, yeah.
But go back to that child in line.
I guess the two things I want you to take away from this. One, I only go to white weddings. Two, I like to stand in line to bathrooms and talk to children.
Yeah, it sounds like you were in the children's bathroom line.
They had 6 gender-neutral bathrooms, and then a children's bathroom.
Was it a smaller door?
It's a small door, very small. I couldn't go in it. I had to crouch.
Is it all the short urinals?
It's all short urinals.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the short urinal.
But they're comically short. It's sort of like an elf. Like they made the bathroom too small. Mm-hmm. They're like, we need to make these child size, but they made them way, way too small. So the children tower over the toilets, like Will Ferrell does in the beginning of Elf.
So it's sort of empowering the children. Make them feel even bigger.
Well, that's why I was in line. To say, I'm not a dancer, but you, sir, pre-job, you are a dancer. And he felt that was very empowering. And then he ducked down and went into the tiny urinal. I assume. I don't know. But all that's to say, in the job world, or in our sort of like adult world, or in these circles, when people say, what do you do? Or when people say, at a wedding, when someone says, are you a dancer? What they mean is, are you a professional dancer? Do you make money dancing? And when I was in this dance space and a child said to me, are you a dancer? What he meant was, we are all dancers. Welcome to this space. Do you identify in your heart and in your soul and in your body and in your being and in your friends and your community and your circle? Do you identify as part of us as being a dancer? And I said, no, but I love to dance. And that was true. And he got that better than anyone.
Mm-hmm. And you don't feel like you sort of rejected the community by saying no?
I rejected the community before I said no. No, it's just that it's not it's not a rejection of the community. It's just acknowledging that I'm not part of the community.
What would it take? Because, and I mean, this is where we are experiencing the tension that we're talking about. Because I'm like, I feel like you're a part of the community. You went to one of those things last night. You took me to one of those things 2 months ago. But if I went to a comedy show last night and took you to a comedy show 2 months ago, that wouldn't mean that I do comedy. So I understand.
Right.
I do understand the difference, but it does, because it's like, I also love to dance. Like, we could have given that children's bathroom participant the same answer and it would have technically been true, but it would have been those two answers would have been had two very different realities behind them.
Right. Would you have answered the question the same way?
I think if you weren't there and I hadn't seen you just answer that, I think potentially, I think I could have said, I'm not a dancer, but I love dancing.
Yeah.
But I think probably if I had seen you answer it like that, then I would have just said, I'm not a dancer. Or maybe I would have gaslit you. Maybe I would have said, I'm really good at dancing. No, I think I would have said, I'm also not a dancer, and but I love to dance, but not as much as this guy.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a cool way to say it.
And that's kind of the distinction, right? Like maybe there's some parallel between me and the children and adults at the dance festival. Is there's some gulf or some distinction there, and then there's some distinction between you and me. And so because you feel yourself as different from me, you could have said, yes, I'm not a dancer, but I love to dance. But because you know that that's my answer, you have to distinguish yourself from me because you know you're different from me.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that I need to distinguish myself from them because I know I'm different from them.
Maybe I should have said, I don't like to dance, but it's how I pay all my bills.
That's good.
And then just ducked into the children's bathroom.
That's right.
He's a prodigy.
This guy hates to dance, but he is absolutely loaded on this stuff. I wonder, I'd like to believe that that's how you would have answered, but I feel like, you know how I actually feel like you would have answered?
How?
He would say, are you a dancer? And I would say, no, but I love to dance. And then he would look at you and say, are you a dancer? And you would have heard my answer and be like, oh, God. No, oh no. Like, you would have tried to distance yourself from anything remotely close to me or to them as possible.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it does seem like maybe we're just spending a lot of time talking about it, but we do spend a lot of time answering questions about how close or far from these things that we like to do are. And they're all things that we like to do. And it's complicated, like anything you enjoy, you might have a fraught relationship with at times, but like this all started with me calling you a clown and you saying, not quite, that's how I pay my bills, but...
I am the richest clown in LA. Yeah, but I hate doing it.
Who do you think the richest clown in LA is? Chad?
Eric
Natalie?
Garcetti?
Look at how it spiked on the audio there.
Yeah,
That's great.
I literally screamed.
That's great.
So
that's probably the only part of this that will be audible.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it. The rest will be in complete silence. So something I was thinking of is, this idea of like manifesting, right? So sometimes I do think that there are people who identify as something long before I would identify as that thing, but they say they're that thing. They say they're a dancer. They say they're a clown. They say they're a comedian. They say they're a poet with a kind of confidence and chutzpah that is disproportionate to their skill and experience in the thing. And in some ways, it's like that's reckless and foolish. But in other ways, I've seen people do that, and because they identify and they actually put in the work and the time, they actually become that thing. They kind of manifest doing it. And I'm the opposite, because like I said, I will go as long as I can before I identify with something. Then sometimes you become that thing on the opposite end of the spectrum. Some people become that thing or identify that thing because someone who is that thing tells them they are. And that's actually what happened with me. So I had been writing, essays, nonfiction, some reporting things, some blog stuff, like editorial and personal essays, like for a while. And I was kind of veering into what felt sort of more experimental. It felt like this isn't an essay, it's essay-like, but it's something different. There's something lyrical or musical or figurative or abstract about it, And in COVID, at the beginning of COVID, it was May 2020, a friend of mine named Alyssa Goodman, she asked me to do a reading of hers called the Miss Manhattan Reading Series, which she's hosted in New York for a long time. She still hosts it. And during COVID, she started doing digital versions of it. And so she asked me to read some of my nonfiction. And one of the other readers is this writer and poet named Abir Hawk. And I didn't know Abir or Abir's work, but Alyssa introduced her as a poet and as a writer, and she read an essay, a beautiful essay. And I read some of my stuff. And I reached out to her after the reading just to say I was so impressed and moved by your work. Like, thank you so much for sharing. I hope we can stay in touch. I'm eager to check out your poetry. And she said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were a poet too. I thought you just wrote nonfiction, but you're a poet. And only in that moment did I don't even think in that moment that, it wasn't in that moment that I identified as a poet, but in that moment I realized that what I was doing was actually writing poetry. And for me, that was an on-ramp to actually owning that and leaning into that in my writing and my studying and in my reading and my identity. And it was only because she called me a poet and called what I had been writing poetry that I said, well, I don't think I'm a poet, but I guess I have been writing poetry. What would happen if I tried doing that more?
And what did happen? Did you just try doing that more?
I did, because I never sat down and said, I'm going to write a poem before. I sat down and said, I'm going to write an essay, and maybe it'll be a little bit lyrical. Maybe there'll be something musical about it. Maybe I'll experiment with form a little bit. And she was like, oh, that's poetry. You're a poet. And I was like, huh. And so then I did something that I'd never done before, which is sit down and try to write a poem. And then that led me to say, hey, there's some things about this that feel natural and comfortable and energizing for me, and some things about this that feel foreign or uncomfortable. Now that I'm trying to write a poem and I'm excited about writing poetry, let me try to get better at this. And that sort of started on my path of taking classes and going to lectures and really feeling, moving poetry in an intentional way from something that didn't exist in my life, or did exist in my life, but not in a way that I identified, to having it be on the margins, to moving all the way into the center of my life. And that was majorly important because it started, it was a huge catalyst for my journey to try to write poetry and try to get good at it.
So in terms of your identity, 100% poet.
Poet, yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't say anything else?
What do you mean, like poet butt?
No.
I'm a butt poet.
I do anal poetry.
Yeah, gorgeous.
No, yeah, any other hyphenates?
I guess like writer, because
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've identified as that for a while. And I guess author, like I say author. Writer, poet, author.
Author is sort of a flex.
I'm flexing.
Because that implies that you have published things, which you have.
I have, yeah.
And you're putting no question in anyone's mind that this is just a craft that you practice for yourself. This is something that this is something that you're trying to make money off of, and that you do.
Yeah. It signals to people that I've been published and published in print, which is both a flex and just a statement of fact.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta own, But I will say, and I'm not sure why, I feel slight feelings of like uneasiness about saying author in ways that I don't about writer and poet, which doesn't make any sense because I'm as much an author as I am a writer or a poet.
Mm-hmm. It is, I feel like it's something that people say less.
Author.
Like if you met John Grisham,
yeah.
I don't know if he would say author.
What do you think he'd say?
Perhaps he'd say novelist.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or he'd say, I'm John Grisham. You don't know who the fuck I am?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know who the fuck I am? Ask your dad.
Yeah, ever heard of a lawyer book?
Yeah.
I wrote them all.
Ever been to an airport? You know me. Yeah.
Wow, I wonder what it's like for John Grisham going to a Walden Books in an airport.
I wonder if it's cool, or I wonder if it's just... He must take all that stuff for granted now, I think.
Maybe, but he could have the same thing that you have, where I don't think you'll ever take anything for granted. And I know that it can't be fully true, and I know that it makes you uncomfortable when I say things like, I think you're the person who everyone in a room most wants to have sex with when you walk into that room. But there is something...
Including this room. by default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that would technically actually be what we would have to find a way to sort of quantify how much or how badly each of us wants to have sex with the other.
Oh, with the other.
So it could be me.
All right. Just if you had to guess, it probably is hard to quantify, and I know I've interrupted you, but do you think you want to have sex with me more than I want to have sex with you? Or do you think it's even?
I don't think either of us are like chomping at the bit to have sex with the other right this moment.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say I know that because I think if we were, we would have talked about it by now.
Yeah, it would have come up.
Wanting to have... I don't know. I think it could be a toss-up.
Uh-huh.
Because I guess what is wanting to have sex with someone? It's seeing them. It's thinking positive thoughts about their energy and their looks. It's sort of realizing a magnetism.
Yeah, there's something ineffable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then at some point, it's your brain saying, "I want to have sex with that person."
Right.
And then
and then your body's saying that.
Yeah, and I don't think we're to that point. So it really is figuring out how to quantify that middle step,
right,
of which one of us is feeling more ineffable towards the other.
Right. I will say, before we started recording, your shirt sleeves were they were kind of half cuffed, like half rolled and half not, and then you remember this, but
yes.
this is for them.
Yeah.
That I asked if you wanted them to be rolled or unrolled, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't even think about it."
Right.
And I think that since rolling these, my desire to have sex with you has gone up.
Mm-hmm. And even the noticing of the roll, there was probably... So I would say maybe in this room, I'm the person who everyone most wants to have sex with.
Okay, so you've proven yourself wrong.
Yeah, there's an exception to every rule.
That's true. That's true.
But I also think, going back to John Grisham and your
yes.
comparison, I just had a moment where I was like, God, I'm good at getting back on topic.
You're famously good at that.
I have missed this. All my Word with family out there who are excited to have me back in the game, buckle up, because the rest of the world's about to discover how good I am at things like getting back on topic. John Grisham, I don't think you'll ever take any of this for granted. I think this could, the collection that comes from this chapbook, say it become like you're the next Rupi Kaur. Is it Rupi
Kaur?
Rupi Kaur?
I think that's how you
pronounce it. I always mistake her with Rumi, the ancient poet.
Oh, okay.
Slightly different.
Their work is an interesting conversation with each other.
We should host a Rupi and Rumi night. Where we have people guess. It's sort of like a David Byrne or David Gurn situation.
That's right.
That's something that...
As you know.
As you all know.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who know, you really know. And for those of you who don't, it's just a fun thing.
It's fun.
Yeah. And I don't mean in terms of... Because obviously people have a lot of thoughts about... Very quickly, Rumi is like an ancient... Is ancient the right word? Old.
Yeah. I'm not that familiar with Rumi's work, but I know broadly.
But Rumi is like, a mix between Buddha and Shakespeare, kind of in terms of how they are considered.
Yeah, with great hair. I always pictured Rumi having like gorgeous hair.
I like that. I didn't find out that they were different from Rupi until a couple years ago.
Oh, you thought those were the same person?
A little bit. And I sort of just wasn't paying attention. And Rupi Kaur is sort of like, and this is no judgment that we're passing. This is just speaking in terms of, I believe, how society sees her.
Don't implicate. You said no judgment. Like I'm saying something. I'm sitting here in silence.
This is both of us are saying this. Well, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
I feel like Ruby Core is, and relevant, seen as sort of a mix between Gwyneth Paltrow and John Grisham.
Okay. Do you want to break that down for me and for those who may or may not be familiar with Ruby Core? Or Gwyneth Paltrow or John Grisham.
Okay. So.
But with great hair.
Starting at the beginning, yeah. Well, we should probably also say who Buddha and William Shakespeare are.
Well, that's funny because no one seems to really know who Shakespeare is.
That's true. It could have been a group of people.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or just one lady.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Could have been Ruby Core. She's a very popular poet. Ruby is, and
started on and really built a following on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah. And
I believe it's one of those things where you just get so popular that people start hating a little bit. She definitely has haters.
Definitely some Ruby backlash.
Yeah.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And I feel that John Grisham is the same way. People, he got popular on Instagram.
Famously.
But no, the man can crank out some novels, and people started liking the novels, and then at some point, I remember when the tides turned against him. There was an episode of Third Rock from the Sun, where each of them is reading a Grisham, and they say, "Where's my Grisham?" And they describe the plot, and they're like, "No, that's my Grisham." And then someone else says, "No, that's my Grisham," and the implication is John Grisham stories sort of all follow a similar plot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gwyneth Paltrow, she's an actress.
What's your favorite Paltrow role, by the way?
I can't name one.
Really?
I mean, I'm very bad at when somebody asks me an on the spot question, my brain erases. So I'm trying to remember.
Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh yeah.
Shakespeare in
Not
Love.
That one. I haven't seen Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, okay. Sliding Doors.
Is she in any other Wessies?
I don't think so.
Did you get famous from Royal Tenenbaums?
Was Royal Tenenbaums before or after Shakespeare in Love?
I have no idea.
Okay. I think Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture.
I think so. Oh yeah, that was a win for
H-Dub.
For the guy, for that yeah. So yes, I remember that. Famously, like, I feel like that campaign to get Shakespeare in Love the Oscar was like a playbook that a lot of people still talk about.
Right.
But they shouldn't. Maybe just let the best movie win. Maybe don't make it all about campaigning. But
to the Academy.
That's
somewhere. Dear Academy.
And to the right. No. Yeah, I think let's just try to squash the beef between the Writers Guild and the AMPTP here right now.
Oh. Hold my beer.
This is actually the one that I'm most worried about saying anything about.
I think we've already said too much.
I think we've already said way too much. Anyway, but I think Gwyneth has, like, there's that little, the kind of, like, the woo-woo-ness that is helpful for people who it's helpful for, but then if you sort of interrogate it, it's like kind of like there's nothing there. I feel like that's some of the hate that Ruby gets.
Right. It's her work is very, very, very popular. Is extremely popular and very recognizable and resonates very deeply with a specific kind or with a specific demographic of person and reader.
What do they look like?
Well, they've got great hair. Great head of hair in general. And because of the popularity and because and then like John Grisham or something, people who are expressly not the audience sort of stand on the margins and hate on the person who makes the work, their work, and the people who with whom the work really resonates.
Right.
And I think, to your point, I think that applies to Rupi Kaur, John Grisham, and many, many other people who have found mainstream success.
Yes, and it's, I would say, a product of the mainstream success much more, if not exclusively, much more than a product of the quality of the work. And it is easy and fun to dunk on people, but all that really matters with that sort of stuff is, yeah, there's people for whom the thing you made resonates quite a bit with, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and then
so Rupi Kaur, we'd love to have you on A Violent Act of Desperation. I'll kick Ben off right now. We're live, so just text me.
If Rupi Kaur came in right now, do you think you would still be the person in the room that the people would want to have sex with the most?
I don't know if I know for certain what she looks like, but I would say probably not.
I can't say one way or the other, but it's I think we're all curious.
I think a new player would enter the arena, so to speak.
It would change the entire geometry of the whole situation.
I would say unlikely, actually, but I don't know whether the way that would shift is that the person who is most wanted to be had sex with is Rupi, or if it's you. It might become you.
Oh, so, okay, that's interesting. Because right now you're top, and so you're saying if she came in regardless, you would immediately go to the bottom.
I think potentially.
Okay. I got to give this way more thought. Will you have me back on next week and we can talk more about it?
Yeah, I told you we're doing this every week.
Great.
What I was going to say is, and again, exquisite at getting back on track, is that you could be, in the popularity way, the next Rupi, the next poet who has mainstream success. And I don't think you would ever take any of that for granted, because you're very good at, and you express it as, this is just something that I can't do. Like we were talking before about how you're not writing right now because you're focusing on just trying to, promote this chapbook, and that once this is done, then you'll get back to writing. And I said, I always convince myself I can multitask, and I can't actually. And we were lightly debating whether that's a strength or a weakness of yours. I think it's a strength. And I think that goes in, I think you just sort of like have a natural, I do not think that life is easy for you. But I think there's something that like, it feels like everything sort of flows towards the way things should be, or the way that I know a lot of other people wish things were. Like the way that you really enjoy the process of writing and you get a lot out of the process of writing. I know a lot of writers who really wish they had that, but are much more into the having written part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for saying that. Your confidence in me and acknowledging things that you see as my strengths, even if I see them as weaknesses, that means a lot to me. And I do. I feel grateful for a million different things, but definitely one of which is that I just love to write and I love to make. And I feel really grateful that I have found a thing that is kind of the gift that keeps on giving, regardless of what the product is. It's that thing of like, the worst day on the fishing boat is better than the best day at the office. Like I went to like a museum. I love to write at the Hammer Museum sometimes. And I distinctly remember one of the best days I've had in months. I went and I was writing for a few hours at the Hammer, and I had an amazing day. It was just beautiful and perfect, and it was just an amazing day. And I looked back on what I had written, and everything I had written, I don't want to say it was bad, but it's nothing that I used or pursued. Like nothing brilliant or worth pursuing came out of that, but it was just an amazing day. It was an amazing way to spend a day. And so I just feel really fortunate that writing always serves me in that way, regardless of what I'm writing is great and gets published and people read it and enjoy it, or whether that doesn't happen. And my great aunt, her name is Anne Hozansky. I don't actually know how old she is. She's one of those women who you don't really know. I'm sure I could ask her like how old I would never ask her. I'm gonna guess, and I think she wouldn't mind me saying this or making this conjecture. I think she's in her 90s.
Can she make a mean gimlet?
She can make a mean lox sandwich.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in the mood for a gimlet? Or did she just seem like
kind of always, but
yeah.
She sounds like someone.
Can we get the gimlets?
Yeah, gimlets. It's just me. I'm not everyone.
All that's to say, she's in her 90s, and she is a huge inspiration to me. Sometimes I will talk to her, I'll email with her, I'll call her, and she'll say something like, hey, like something that bothers me is when people like call during my writing time. Like they know I'm writing, but why do they insist on calling? And you could take a lot of things out of that, but the thing that I take from that is that this is a woman in her 90s, and writing gives her such purpose and fulfillment and joy that is like my greatest hope, that I can be in my 90s and still just want to get up and write every day and just like have a sense of purpose and have something that makes me happy to do it. That the doing of it makes me happy and not even like what I'm producing. And she is like my template for that. So I'm hoping in 60 years or whatever, I'll still be able to sit here and say like, it just makes me happy. And I feel lucky that it does, that I have it.
Will you, next time you talk to Anne Hozansky, tell her that I don't think I know that she's really fucking cool, and if she walked into this room right now...
Careful.
I'm sorry, but a nonagenarian who's like, these bitches just won't stop bothering me. When does she... She's
calling everyone bitches. Yeah. I know I didn't say that, but she calls everyone bitches. Yeah.
When is she writing? What are the hours? And also I love all of it, but I really love her being like, people know I'm writing right now. Like, how do people know?
You know, I've never really drilled into the specifics of it, and for me it's more just I don't know the answer to that, but I just know that she's in her 90s, and the thing that she wants to do all the time and spends an enormous amount of time doing is writing, because it is the thing that makes her the happiest, and that is what I aspire to do. I don't know the details.
You should find out the hours if you ever talk to her on the phone, because you don't want to be one of those people.
You know, it's interesting. I have called, and I feel like I've called at different hours, and she's never acknowledged that I'm calling during her writing time. Maybe when I call and she doesn't answer, maybe that's during her writing time. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I do call and I get like a pass, like there's some exception, like she doesn't mind that I've called. Or maybe I do call and she answers and she's secretly upset that I've called during her writing time.
Yeah, are you sure you didn't call during her writing time? One of the times she said, I really don't like it when people call during my writing time. Is that how she answered the phone? Because that might...
Hey, bitch. Totally unrelated. I hate when people call during my writing time. They know I'm writing. How are you? How can I help you? During that call, I should have known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect time for us to close by you reading a wonderful poem from your wonderful collection.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I also, while you're getting ready, I should acknowledge...
I need a lot of time to prep for this.
That historically, I have been someone who stopped... Yeah, there's a microphone back here in case... some of you might have said, is there even a microphone there based on the audio quality you're getting right now? There is. It was hidden. Anyway, I was going to say that if you're familiar with Julian Stern, As Per Usual Blows You Away, a show that I did a few years ago, I did have a bit where I said that we're not supposed to say the B word anymore. And since then, I think it's just come back into being okay to say. And that's more of like an editor's note for anyone who's like, wait, why is Julian throwing that word around instead of, in the joke, the word that I said should replace it is merkin.
Oh, I remember this bit. It's a good bit. Yeah.
I just feel like there was a time where, I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong about it. So please write in, comment, whatever. Let me know whether it was okay for me to say that word.
And regardless, it was okay for me to say it because he broke the seal on
I
it.
opened
I was
the
just
door.
repeating it because he said it.
Yeah.
And you said it because my Aunt Anne famously says it
Yeah.
all the time. I feel like this feels like a different conversation. It's definitely okay when Lizzo says it. We can all agree with that.
Oh, sure.
And I've always seen you as a Lizzo type in certain ways.
I appreciate that. But, I feel like it's a question as to whether straight cis men should say it. Almost
Definitely.
everyone else can say it.
I try not to say it, and I want to apologize that I said it on this very public medium.
I want to apologize for goading you into saying it.
I got. It's sort of like, it's sort of like baited. This was kind of this whole thing was like a Z-Way type ruse to get me to say the word.
That was actually my whole plan.
And now you're gonna clip it, and it's gonna become a whole. This is gonna be my Chet Hanks moment.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole I only go to white weddings thing is going to be a much bigger moment for that. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I stand by that.
I'm just realizing I don't know if you have enough experience with social media for me to have put you on a podcast. I feel bad that I've allowed you to say some of the things that you've said.
I think you've taken advantage of me.
I feel like it a little bit.
But I feel like I needed to learn this the hard way.
Yeah.
This is sort of like in the early days of Colbert, when the guests, at some point, the whole thing was sort of like a gotcha of the guests. And maybe they felt a little bit bad, but then at some point it's like, you got to know what you're walking into here.
Right. I thought you were going to say in the early days of Colvid.
Oh, Colvid.
That phrase immediately goes, when I hear in the early days of I'm like, we're talking about COVID.
That's right.
Yeah.
I swerved you on that one. Yeah. Do you want me to read a poem?
I would love you to.
Great. Thanks again for having me.
I might read along.
Okay. Do you want me to? All right. This poem. So this is from my chapbook. It's called "The Funny Thing About a Panic Attack."
Where can people get it?
You can get it online at. My name is Ben Kassoy. You can get it at benkassoy.com/books.
Cool.
Or you can Google the title, "The Funny Thing About a Panic Attack," or on my Instagram at @bkassoy. All the links are there.
And this is published by Bottle Cap Press, which is a real publishing company.
That's true, and the fact that you had to really emphasize that.
Well, people don't know indie publishers,
No.
and I think I'm emphasizing it to let you know this is, especially if I think this has been a great conversation, incredibly watchable. So I'm not saying if you've watched this far because it's like, oh, it's going to be hard to watch. No, I think congrats on spending 45 minutes doing a nice thing for yourself.
Yeah. And you're welcome.
Yes. But you should know that this isn't, especially as we've had this conversation centered mostly around identity and legitimacy within crafts that one does. I think it is important to let people know this is legit. You didn't, because as I've told you, I really could have done this for you, and it could have been the first release from Sternal Journal Publishing, and I'm glad that you didn't settle for that.
Well, when I turn into a prolific Grisham type poet, Sternal Journal Publishing is going for the gold. But also it's also a good opportunity to say Bottle Cap Press is not only a legit publisher. They're very cool. They're based here in LA. They're an indie publisher. They publish a lot of really interesting and fascinating and stellar work. And you should check out their other stuff too. I don't want to guarantee this, but when they sent me my copies of The Funny Thing About a Panic Attack, the publisher threw in some other Bottle Cap Press titles. So
that's cool.
If you purchase this, you can also get potentially, again, no guarantees, but some other cool chapbooks. And they do art, they do fiction, and poetry. So check out Bottle Cap Press. They're great. And they've been fantastic to work with also.
I'm just going to say that I didn't get extra. So you might have been getting the special author treatment.
Can we cut this?
Because you are an author.
Out of all the things that I've said, this is the one that is completely mortifying, and we have to cut it out. I'm going to read it.
You should.
Cool. This is called Double Double. It's on before pages. It's on page 0. Teach me how to double fist this brief life. How to bob for caramel apples 2 at a time. How to pronounce it caramel because it's just more. Teach me how to quadruple my arms and octopus your body. Teach me how to weeping willow every tender trunk. Teach me how to Dougie. Teach me how to Dougie. I want to have my cake and eat it with you. Want to swallow a seed and bloom into a beanstalk. Frisbee my phone into the sea and see if I miss it. Dig to the earth's core for every morning's magma smoothie. Grip the eggs so tight 2 baby chicks cluck instant yellow and become my hands and make factory farms fear the superhero they call chicken fingers. This is a world where 2 Michelle Tanners double thumbs up and say, you got it, dude, 'cause it takes 2, and this is how the West was fun. In here, there's a new We Are the World with celebrity frogs harmonizing in gorgeous ribbits. And when you ask a little boy his favorite color, he says blue, and also rainbow. This world ends with a twin sun slingshot into the sky to euthanize us, bright and burning, to double infinity. Double clutch, double dutch, double dip, double hiss, double yes, double wet, double death, double empty these feelings onto the hardwood floor. They say Jesus is everywhere, so I like to believe he's riding all the horses in the world at the same time. That. Teach me how to that.
That was Ben Kassoy. He is a poet, a writer, and an author. This has been A Violent Act of Desperation. I'm Julian Stern.
Let's hug.
Let's hug. Is there anything else you want people to, any white weddings you have coming up?